Locked On's NHL coverage of free agency continues as the New York Islanders have signed 4 of their players to long-term contracts. Gil Martin with Locked On Islanders joins us now to react to the moves and break down what it means for the Islanders going forward. Gil, we're going to get to Ilya Sorokin, Semyon Varlamov, Scott Mayfield, and Pierre Engvall, but we all know the King Daddy Topper is getting their number one goalie locked up. Sorokin signs 8 years, $8.25 million as the cap hit. Your immediate reaction when you heard that news?
I think that's great news. I mean, look, the Islanders barely made the playoffs this year. No way they even sniffed the playoffs without Ilya Sorokin. He is one of the elite goaltenders in this league, was a finalist for the Vezina Trophy, and I think that's a reasonable term. Over the course of 8 years, the cost of an elite goalie is only going to go up. So this is your franchise cornerstone, and you've locked him up for 8 years. I'm happy with it.
Yeah, not only in the regular season, but this guy in 13 playoff games, a .923 save percentage. He just kicks out pucks left, right. Great rebound control, great goalie. And how much do you think Semyon Varlamov has allowed him to grow? Obviously, the country mates, and now we're going to see them together for at least the next 4 years as Varlamov has signed a 4-year extension for $2.75 annually.
You know, the fact that they're both Russian, they both knew each other in Russia. Varlamov really was able to mentor Sorokin both on and off the ice, help him acclimate to life in New York, help him to acclimate to life in the NHL. And, you know, he's a solid backup and someone who is just a good team guy to have around. 275, I was thinking it would be either 2 or 2.5, but I'm not going to split hairs about that. 4 years, though, I was expecting it to be more like 2, but it's not a bad move.
And with that, what's the perfect split for you for these two goalies next season?
I would go something around 55-35 in starts, or 56-36 if you want to, get it up to 82. But yeah, something like that, because I don't want Sorokin to be too tired when you reach the playoffs. I think he was a little tired this year against Carolina because after the trade deadline, Varlamov only played in 3 games, and they needed to win almost every night to make the playoffs. But ideally, you would want it closer to 56-36.
And we should note that the Varlamov extension begins right now, but Ilya Sorokin still has 1 year left at $4 million on his contract, and then it will be 8 years beyond that at 8.25. So in 2024 through 2027, the Islanders will be spending $11 million in the crease and have their tandem locked up with Ilya Sorokin and Semyon Varlamov, one of the big defensemen who could sometimes be misinterpreted as a goalie with how many shots Scott Mayfield blocks, but he was an important piece. However, the term really jumps out at me on both of these skaters that Lou Lamoriello locked up. Scott Mayfield, $3.5 million AAV at 7 years. How are you feeling about that one?
The AAV doesn't bother me that much. He's a right-handed defenseman, reliable third pair guy who can move up to your second pair in a pinch. Mostly a stay-at-home guy, but 7 years when he's already on the wrong side of 30 is a little bit of a concern for me. But Mayfield is a sort of a glue guy on this team, knows his role, plays it well. I'm a little more worried about years 5, 6, and 7 on this deal than I am about the first 4.
Yeah, and that's fair. He also put up a career high in points last year. It was 24, but he is that steady, reliable presence that every team needs. You just wonder, is it a good deal if it's on the bottom pair, or you do see some upside that he could be, the shutdown complementary piece on a top 4 with a more offensive defenseman?
I think on a good team, he's your bottom pair defenseman, but like a very solid, very good bottom pair defenseman. He can move up to the second pair in a pinch, but it's really not his role.
Now with Pierre Engvall, he found a role on Long Island after coming over from the Toronto Maple Leafs midway through last season, where he put up 9 points in 18 games, 2 points in 6 playoff games, and Lou Lamoriello saw enough that he wanted to lock him up for 7 years himself at $3 million. Now, unlike Mayfield, Pierre Engvall is only 27 years old, so do you see some more upside for the speedy winger?
I do, and I think, you mentioned speedy. That's the key. The Islanders do not have a lot of team speed. After they traded Anthony Beauvillier, that was sort of one of their fastest wingers. So Engvall gave them speed, and he had very, very good chemistry with Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri. Down the stretch, that was their best line, and in the playoffs, it was their most consistent line. So keeping that group together makes sense. Again, I wasn't expecting 7 years. The $3 million to me is right about where it should have been.
And just philosophically about Lou Lamoriello, because this isn't the first time he's gone out of his way to give a lot of term. We saw it with Jean-Gabriel Pageau. We've seen it countless more times. What are your thoughts on the way Lou Lamoriello approaches business for the long term with the Islanders?
He does end up signing people to these long deals that I think on the back end come back to hurt the team. And I understand wanting to keep your core together, but now the question is, can he improve the team? And to do that, he's going to have to start maybe trading a Pageau or trading a Palmieri or a useful player who he does tend to overpay a little bit. So I do have a problem with the way he hands out some of these contracts sometimes. And I'm hoping that there is one more big move. The rumors about Alex DeBrincat are still out there. But, do the Islanders have the ammunition it would take to get him? That remains a big question, and takes us back to Lou Lamoriello again, I guess.
Yeah, and one thing we do know is it will be a cone of silence until something happens. Not a whole lot of rumors coming out of the Lou Lamoriello camp. So on Cap Friendly, it shows 6 years in advance, and the Islanders have 7 players that have an arrow because their contracts are longer than 6 years. For more on all the offseason moves made by the New York Islanders, tune in to Locked On Islanders for free on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.